Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 5:30 in the morning here, February 23rd, Tuesday here in Calgary, Alberta, and I'm happy to be here again. This is one child abuse survivor to another. Excuse me. I'm just waking up and having a coffee, and glad you can tune in, and just hope you have a great day. And we're going to be talking, continuing on an article I found on understanding child maltreatment and juvenile delinquency, the research. It's part one. There's two parts to it, and we're going to cover that too. And just because I think that article is so interesting, the research that has been done in the past and is being done on the link between child maltreatment and juvenile delinquency, and it's just so important to me because I saw so much of that growing up. I found this at www.cwla.org, and it's written by Kathy Spatz-Whittam, PhD. And it's like a lot of charts and information there regarding the actual studies that were done. And so I didn't read any of that just because it's all chart material. But some of it was really quite interesting about the research and what they found. And so I thought we'd continue on with that today, finish up part one anyway, and see how far we can go with the next part. Excuse me. This is not a professional show. I'll just do some housekeeping. I'm not a professional counselor or therapist, and I don't have any professional certificates in those areas, and I wish that I did, but I don't. I'm just a person who sits on blogtalkradio.com. I pay to do this show because I think it's important that we talk about abuse and understand the issues that surround child abuse and especially child abuse and human rights abuses. I just think that people, it's not talked about enough. And when it is talked about, it's usually in the news, and it's too late because it usually has something to do with a death or a murder of a child or an adult who has been involved in an abusive situation where they've been murdered. And usually that's what we hear in the news, and or that children are removed from the home and in the hospital due to abuse that they've suffered from their caregivers, right? Whether it's a parent or a caregiver. So I think, I'd like to change those statistics, and really that's my goal, is to, continue on in child rights and human rights, and really just spend the rest of my life just seeing what I can do to help make this world a better place. Because really it was bothering me. I was sitting on the couch a few years ago just watching a TV program, and I saw something I didn't like. And it really affected me, and I thought, why am I just sitting on the couch? Especially coming from the situation that I came from, growing up in an abusive home, and understanding the pain involved behind child abuse and what goes on in homes where parents just don't have the coping skills and don't have the education and the coping skills, and have so many mental problems and emotional problems themselves. And people are suffering out there. Why am I just sitting here when I could actually... I'm kind of a person that should be getting involved because I've seen it firsthand, and I know what these people are suffering and going through, and so why I'm just sitting on the couch, I don't know. So this is like, a few years back, and I just decided to do the blog talk show because I'm in between courses at Mount Royal University here in Calgary, and I'm taking some time off. I didn't like the quality of my work on my last course, so I thought I'd just take a break and go back with a fresh mind and a fresh start. And I thought, yeah, why not? I heard some other stuff on Blog Talk Radio one time, and I thought, yeah, I'll just do a show too. I was just going to do a one day a week, and then I decided to do 5 shows during the week in the morning, just real quick shows, and then a few during the week in the evening. So that's what it kind of developed into. And so, yeah, I'm not a professional at all. I don't want anyone to think that this show should replace professional therapy or getting professional help. And really, I'm here to encourage people to keep reaching out and keep looking for that healing and that wholeness, wherever you can get it. And whether it's a counselor or a therapist, or you find a good support group to get into if you're suffering from adult survivor issues of child abuse of any kind. It's so important to reach out and get some help because there's so many people not talking about it because it's such an uncomfortable topic, right? So if you're a young person, we cover a lot of a lot of abuse-related issues on this show, and so I really ask that everyone listen at their own discretion, first of all. And if it's a topic that's going to bother you, just turn it off. And also, if you're a young person under the age of 18, make sure you're listening to this with someone who can help you with questions that you might have, especially young, really young, because really this show is about children. It's about child abuse, and it's really for the cessation and complete, cessation and end of child abuse. So, I don't mind children listening. I just think that they should listen with an adult, someone they trust, and, I would hope that you have a parent who cares about what you're listening to and can really help you with questions and stuff, because abuse is a scary topic, and I think so often, that's why it's not talked about. It makes people uncomfortable because it hits our very core. It really hits people's very core emotional sort of sense of being, right, when we hear about child abuse and stuff like that. But when you've lived through it, it was more uncomfortable for me to live through child abuse than it is for me to talk about it. So, but years ago I would not have been able to do this just because I had not really come far enough in my healing journey. So that's why this show can trigger people. Shows like this, and even movies and things with abuse situations in them, can trigger people who are suffering from like post-traumatic stress disorder and different disorders due to abuse. So that's why if the show's going to trigger you, please turn it off, because it's just, you can find something else that's soothing and comforting to listen to. And I just think everyone deserves the chance to be in a safe environment. And so we all know where we're at in our healing journey, and I would ask that you take responsibility for what you listen to and make sure that you listen to something that isn't going to really disturb you, right? Because that's so important. So I always tell people what we're talking about. So we're going to continue on understanding child maltreatment and juvenile delinquency, the research, at www.cwla.org, at Kathy Spatz-Whittam, PhD. And yesterday we were just kind of going through looking at about halfway through the article, that, physical abuse was associated with the highest risk of arrest for subsequent violence, but neglect was found to be related to violence in the study as well, and the difference was 1%. Maxfield and Whittam reported that rates of arrest for violent crime were 21% for physically abused children and 20% for neglected children, so there was only 1 point difference between the physical abuse and neglect of people being arrested for a violent crime. So it doesn't seem to matter whether it's physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. It does increase the risk for people becoming involved in juvenile delinquent situations, and also later on in life in violent crimes, right? So it's just so important that we take a look at this. And I know people in my own life, growing up in the home that I did, people in our family, some of the family members didn't go on to commit crimes, but then others did, and so it was kind of like, it doesn't affect everyone, and child abuse doesn't affect everyone the same way. So I just found it quite interesting that some of the siblings would go the way they did, and then some of the other ones were able to live, lives that were comparably normal, compared to some of us, so it was quite interesting. Other consequences, I'm just going to continue reading here. Although much attention has been focused on the relationship between child maltreatment and subsequent delinquency and violence, there is also increasing evidence that childhood victimization has the potential to affect multiple domains of functioning. In a series of articles on other aspects of functioning influenced by childhood victimization, Whittam and colleagues have reported on other outcomes for which abused and neglected children are at an increased risk. And some of these other consequences include mental health problems such as post-traumatic stress disorder, suicide attempts, and alcohol problems in women, social and behavioral problems, including running away, prostitution, and lower rates of employment, and cognitive and intellectual functioning, including lower reading ability and IQ scores in young adulthood. Thus, the consequences of childhood abuse and neglect have the potential to affect a child's ability to interact with the world and across multiple domains of functioning. Although there is a group of abused and neglected children who appear resilient to the negative outcomes discussed in these research findings, the clear the clear implication of these findings is that there is a need for early intervention in the lives of abused and neglected children. It says here, implications. Educators, social workers, healthcare workers, mental health practitioners, law enforcement officers, and other youth-serving professionals need to recognize the signs of abuse and neglect and intervene early in the lives of these children. Later interventions should not be ignored. The more time that passes without helpful and positive intervention efforts, however, the more difficult the change process becomes. Although it is important to identify abused and neglected children early, it is also critical to be sensitive to the potential negative effects of increased attention and surveillance. This attention may represent a double-edged sword in which children become labeled or are expected to become delinquent. Great care must be taken to prevent this early identification from becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. And although these findings support the notion of a cycle of violence, they also reinforce the need to pay attention to neglect. That is, these results indicate that children who are neglected, in addition to those who are physically abused, are at high risk for crime and violence. This is especially important given that neglect is far more common than other forms of abuse in nationwide estimates. For example, one source placed, this is 1988, so some of the numbers are going to be off, right, for the stats. For example, one source placed 1988 incidence rates at 14.6 per 1,000 children for neglect, compared to 4.9 and 2.1 for physical and sexual abuse, respectively, in Part 2. This monograph will chronicle an array of programmatic responses from prevention of child abuse and neglect to effective interventions in the juvenile justice system to broader systematic reform that have been developed to achieve better outcomes in behalf of children, youth, and families in these areas. So it's quite interesting, they say that, educators, social workers, healthcare workers, mental health practitioners, law enforcement officers, and anyone serving in a youth serving professional needs to recognize the signs of abuse and neglect and intervene early, because later interventions should not be ignored. They're good too, but the more time that passes, they said, without helpful and positive intervention efforts, however, the more difficult the change process becomes with that child. And so obviously, right, the longer a child spends in an abusive home, the more chances, the more damage is going to be done, emotionally, psychologically, physically, just about any way. So it's so important that everyone, even if you grew up in a home that was a great home and not abusive, and you don't know anybody that's been abused, it's so important for all of us to get involved if we want to make a difference and actually really get a proactive approach on child abuse, which needs to happen, because children are dying, and that's the sad part. Kids are dying, little babies are dying at the hands of caregivers, and they always have. This is not a new thing, and but I think that now, because of the media, the news can get out a lot quicker. A lot of people are standing up and talking about it. I know that's what I'm doing. And a lot of people are saying no. And, I'm going to talk about it, whether it makes society uncomfortable or not. We have to do something for these children out there right now. And so if we're going to do that, then we need to all stand up and raise our voices, whether it's in the courts, whether it's in the lawmaking processes and the sentencing for abusive parents. I don't know. It's going to take a lot of effort. And really, it comes down, seems to me, to anyone who works with children, because I don't. Anyone who works with children should know and understand the signs of abuse and really be on the lookout for children. And the only real correct and right thing to do is that if you suspect a child is being abused, make the phone call. If you don't make the phone call, that child could die. If you don't make the phone call, that child could maybe live on to become an adult, but then they could die inside. And so you're still killing them either way by not making the phone call. So you do want to do the right thing and make the phone call, because if it turns out that the child's not being abused, well, then that's great. That's wonderful. But if it turns out that the child is being abused, then you could save that child's life. It's so important. Those little babies and stuff. Please, if you work with children or you know children in your area, make sure you keep a little watch out on them, right? Because if they're being abused, no one at home is going to watch out for them, and they could be killed. So you want to make sure that you be the eyes and ears for those children, and listen and pay attention and watch for the signs. And you can find the signs of abuse on lots of websites, great websites, but I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dream Catchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to stand with them. Their website is awesome, and you can find it www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, and there you can find the Child Abuse Handbook. It's a free PDF download written by President and author Donna Shear, and also co-authored by author and CEO and founder Sandra Potter, and you can get that free download as a PDF download, absolutely free. And on it is all the stuff, all the signs and all the symptoms and what to look for and how to report it, how to report child abuse, what to do if a child comes to you and says, I'm being abused. There's so many steps that are necessary so that we don't mess up the case involved with this child. So I would highly recommend you go visit their website. And if you need any information, get a hold of me. I'll be back on tonight, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. That's at 4:30 p.m. my time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you can join us. It's going to be all about emotional abuse. And Donna Shear is the host, and I'm the co-host. And I just hope you can join us and tune in tonight. I'll be glad if you can. So have a great day, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and remember to keep that hope alive and stay alive and be good to yourself. Treat yourself very well. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.